Mr. Speaker, sir. Right of replies. Mr. Speaker, sir, I'd like to thank you and I'd like to thank all the members who have actually made a contribution. Mr. Speaker, sir, as I highlighted in the introduction, and indeed is encapsulated by the Honourable Prime Minister, the reason why I brought this particular motion is to very strongly condemn the utterances by Honourable Bulitavu because of the enormous impact such utterances have by members of Parliament. Its ability to influence people, its ability to set the political discourse of this country, Mr. Speaker, sir. And that is precisely what we have been saying. It's been lost on NFP, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I say this, and I'll come to that, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, and I'll come to this. The reason, Mr. Speaker, sir, is that as we have seen, and I quoted from Nazi Germany, and other countries, you can take the example, these prejudices are slowly built upon year after year, month after month, day after day, where it seeks to permeate through every facet of our society. That is what we are scared of. That is what we are worried about. That is what we must stop. That is what we must stop. The interventions in government in 1987 twice, the interventions in government in 2000 was, I'll come to 2006, Mr. Speaker, sir, was premised on the idea of ethnic differences. There is a significant difference. When you have interventions in government where it splits our society based on ethnic differences, it creates a chasm that is very hard to fill, Mr. Speaker, sir. And that is precisely what we have been trying to do, what the Honourable Prime Minister has been trying to do, what this Constitution seeks to do. That is what we are trying to address. Mr. Speaker, sir, Honourable Bhiman Prasad talked about NFP being a great party, formed under a mango tree, etc. Mr. Speaker, sir, the reason why I keep on bringing this about is because he has not addressed the substantive issue. He has not addressed the hypocrisy, Mr. Speaker, and it's an epitome of the hypocrisy that exists.
Order.
And I'll show, Mr. Speaker, and I'll demonstrate. When Honourable Lalam Balavu made those statements about NFP and Labour being Bulangi parties, one of the rationale is there on record, on the record, Mr. Speaker, on record, the media have it, Honourable Prasad made a statement saying, how can they call us a Bulangi party when we have had Itauke members? He quoted Honourable Tuisawau's father as being a member of NFP. And then he quoted Honourable Tikon Tuandua and Honourable Garigari Tambua as members. He said, therefore, as a result of Itauke people being members of NFP, NFP cannot be called up.
Order.
Mr. Speaker, sir, he said, as a result of Itauke people being members of NFP, NFP cannot be called a Bulangi party. He missed the point. He missed the point. The point that the Honourable Prime Minister is trying to make. That goes to show the shallowness and the impotency, and I've said repeatedly, the impotency of him as a leader of NFP.
Order.
We don't want to know what NFP was like. We want to know what NFP is like today, not what it was like. We want to know what it was like, what it is like today. Mr. Speaker, sir, he of course has obscured those comments, Mr. Speaker, sir. He, in fact, defended Honourable Garigari Tambua for not making comments. Mr. Speaker, sir, it's not about defending, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, she had numerous opportunities, but she didn't. Mr. Speaker, sir. But the point is, Mr. Speaker, the appeal made by members of this side of the House of this Parliament by the Honourable Prime Minister, the female members of this side of Parliament, they did not let go. They spoke from the heart. They spoke about how they felt. They spoke about their own personal experiences as a woman. And the women on the other side had the opportunity to do so, not just tonight, but prior to tonight. Prior to tonight. And the reason why members of this side of Parliament kept on talking about how they had the opportunity to do so, when some of them are when they're so active on social media on any comment, yet on this where they were so deafeningly silent. That is the hypocrisy. And that, I think, is what causes a lot more anguish to people than anything else. That is the hypocrisy. Mr. Speaker, sir, I think the issue here is that, heaven forbid, if one of the members of Fiji First had made such a comment, I can assure the honourable members that the female members of the opposition would have been there day in, day out. They would have let loose. Honourable Prasad, Honourable Leader of Opposition, would have let them loose. That's what would have happened, Mr. Speaker, sir. But because now it's one of them who's making the comment, they have, Mr. Speaker, sir, allowed political expediency to get in the way of common human decency, common human principle and human rights. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is unfortunate that Honourable Prasad's impotency seems to be contagious. The Honourable Leader of Opposition seems to get it now too. He's got that impotency now too. Mr. Speaker, sir, Mr. Speaker, sir, had a wonderful occasion this evening to take a principled position. A principled position to condemn this. And he could have shown leadership, Mr. Speaker, sir, as our Honourable Prime Minister has done, leadership in condemning gender-based violence, leadership in condemning racial stereotyping, but he failed to do so. Why did he do that, Mr. Speaker, sir? The reason he gave was that there seems to be, apparently according to him, a legal impediment. Mr. Speaker, sir, Honourable Nawaikula had raised the point of order when I got up to make submit my motion. And Mr. Speaker, sir, the Honourable Nawaikula made the point of order. Mr. Speaker, sir, you very lucidly and eloquently gave the reasons as to why you allowed this motion. And the 3 points that the Honourable Nawaikula raised, you addressed them head on. You pointed out that there is no issue of sub judice. Any good lawyer would tell us, Mr. Speaker, sir, there is no sub judice in place. It's simply a complaint has been made. Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, and to Honourable Nawaikula's credit, he accepted your ruling quite graciously. On those rare occasions, he accepted your ruling quite graciously. And Mr. Speaker, sir, despite that, Mr. Speaker, sir, despite that, the Honourable Leader of Opposition raised exactly the same rationale to not make a comment. In other words, Mr. Speaker, sir, he has shown contempt for what you have ruled. That's what he has done, Mr. Speaker, sir. And Mr. Speaker, sir, it would appear the wimpish approach of the Leader of Opposition is because he's given in to political expediency. It would appear, Mr. Speaker, sir, that the Honourable Leader of Opposition does not want to make a statement against racism. He does not want to make a statement against gender-based violence because simply it was somebody who made that comment with somebody who sits behind him. I'm not here to speculate about how much power Honourable Buli Tavu weaves in that political party. It's not my business. But what I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, sir, what today demonstrates, with the day he made his comments, how the President, Honorable Tui Sawau, made certain comments. The supposed apology, which was again a wimpish apology, Mr. Speaker, sir. None of that, Mr. Speaker, sir, has augured well for us. None of that, Mr. Speaker, sir, has showed any particular type of stoicism, any particular resolve, an adherence to principled position. None of that. Political expediency has got in the way. And the Honourable Leader of Opposition's rationale for that is today meant, Mr. Speaker, sir, that the female members of his party aren't able to stand up and speak today. They did not stand up and speak. No point saying no now. They did not stand up and speak. They should have been the first ones. And for me, I kind of question now this parliamentary grouping of women parliamentarians that they have. Want to have great sort of, terms of reference. It is all hollow if you can't stand up at the right time. Mr. Speaker, sir, also, the Honourable Leader of Opposition's position has meant that honourable members like Honourable Chale, who I know has been influenced by the NGO and has a lot of good comments to make, and does make the right position known as he did in the Maritime Industry Act, Mr. Speaker, sir. He himself was unable to speak because of that, Mr. Speaker, sir. Today marks, Mr. Speaker, sir, it marks the epitome. This is a perfect example of how political expediency trumps of a basic human decency, dignity and rights, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, I really need to say this because I'm quite astounded by the Leader of Opposition's rationale for not speaking against this. He has been the Prime Minister of Fiji. He's actually a seasoned politician. He was able to remodel himself from a military person to a Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, sir, listen. He has been the head of the executive. He's been the head of the defense forces. He knows when the matter is sub judice or not. He knows that in his heart. The Honourable Leader of Opposition does know that, Mr. Speaker, sir. But again, it's not about Honourable Leader of Opposition usurping the powers of the police or the DPP. You're not usurping their powers, Mr. Speaker, sir. The Parliament has certain privileges too. And nobody's been charged, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, that is in fact being disingenuous. We've constantly spoken about coming to this House and being upfront. Mr. Speaker, sir, I highlighted the issue about this us and them mentality. We've seen it constantly manifesting itself in Parliament. Jibes here, comments there, agricultural analysis based on ethnicity, kidney dialysis based on ethnicity, who's getting the services, justification of racial idioms, as stereotype as it may be, Mr. Speaker, sir, to the extent, and I remember thinking about this, I remember a few sessions back, Mr. Speaker, sir, and this is how trivial it gets. We were, I think, Honourable Minister for Sports talked about how Roy Krishna won this international award, and everybody stood up and congratulated him. Honourable Lavere, after a while, stood up and said, we must not forget the rugby boys. We were talking about Roy Krishna. We were talking about football. It's not a threat to rugby. We all love rugby. When the Fijian sevens team does well, we congratulate them. We talk about them. We give them the accolades. We don't have anybody sitting from this side saying, yeah, but we must not forget about the football team. We must not forget about Roy Krishna. We don't say that. It's that sense of insecurity, Mr. Speaker, sir. It's that sense of prejudice that permeates through every faculty. That is what we must get rid of, Mr. Speaker, sir. And if the honourable members on the other side were honest with themselves, that give themselves a moment to contemplate and do a bit of self-reflection. They need to do some self-reflection, Mr. Speaker, sir, because that is what is required indeed after this statement that has been issued. Mr. Speaker, sir, we need to make progress in our country. We need to stand up and speak out when something as momentous as what has been done happens in our country. There are certain basic values and principles that we must always speak out against, must stand up against, or speak for, if it creates that level of anxiety in our society and has the ability to affect and fracture our society, Mr. Speaker, sir. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, with those words, we'd like to emphatically say that we must all vote in condemnation of the utterances by Honorable Itabu, because it is actually an anathema to a free and democratic society where everybody's rights and privileges are maintained. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank the Honourable Attorney-General.